I stood at the back of the conference room in the San Francisco Tech Tower, watching my own algorithm get pitched by someone who didn't understand a single line of its code. Marcus Chen, my boss at Vantage Systems, stood beneath the projector light with his hands spread wide, selling my work to a room full of venture capitalists like it was his own child. The slides flickered behind him, graphs I'd spent 18 months perfecting, predictive models that could revolutionize supply chain logistics across 3 continents. Every formula, every data point, every elegant solution to problems these investors didn't even know existed mine. This system, Marcus said, his voice smooth and confident, represents the future of autonomous inventory management. We're talking about a 42% reduction in overhead costs, real-time adaptation to market fluctuations, and scalability that current models can't touch. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other, my laptop bag heavy against my hip. I'd been told to attend as technical support, to stand quietly in case Marcus needed to reference something he couldn't explain. I'd been told to dress professionally, so I wore the same black blazer and simple blouse I always wore to these things, my hair pulled back, my face bare of the dramatic makeup that seemed to be uniform among the women who worked in business development. The lead investor, a silver-haired man named Richard Hartley, leaned forward in his chair. He wore a watch that probably cost more than my annual salary. "The modeling is impressive," he said, "but I'm concerned about implementation. This kind of system requires someone who really understands both the technical architecture and the business application. Do you have that person on your team?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. I've been working in predictive analytics for over a decade. I know exactly what enterprises need." My jaw tightened. I'd joined Vantage Systems 3 years ago, fresh out of my master's program, naive enough to believe that good work would speak for itself. Marcus had been brought in 6 months ago as the new director of innovation, a title that apparently meant taking credit for innovations he hadn't created. "And the algorithm itself?" another investor asked, a woman with sharp eyes and sharper questions. "This isn't just a modification of existing frameworks. Someone built this from the ground up." "That's correct," Marcus said. "It required a very specific skill set. Advanced machine learning, complex systems theory, econometric modeling." He smiled. "I brought in some contractors to help with the heavy lifting, but the vision and execution, that was all internal leadership." Contractors. He'd reduced me to anonymous contractors. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket but ignored it. The room was warm, too warm, and I could feel sweat gathering at the back of my neck. I'd spent countless nights building this system, testing it, breaking it, rebuilding it better. I'd missed my sister's wedding because I was debugging a critical failure at 3 in the morning. I'd turned down job offers from companies that would have actually valued my work because I believed stupidly, desperately, that eventually Marcus would acknowledge what I'd done. "Can we see the core architecture?" Hartley asked. "I want to understand the decision tree logic." Marcus's smile flickered for just a moment. "Of course. Let me pull up the technical documentation." He clicked through the slides, but I could see his hand hesitate over the laptop. He didn't know which file to open. The technical documentation was 300 pages of dense explanation that I'd written in a format he'd never bothered to learn. "Actually," Marcus said, recovering smoothly, "I think it would be more efficient if our technical support walked you through it. She's been helping with some of the implementation details." Every head in the room turned toward me. I felt my face flush as I walked forward, my footsteps too loud on the polished floor. The investors looked at me with polite disinterest. I was the help, the assistant, the person who made sure the real innovators had their coffee and their files organized. "Hi," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen." "Doctor," one of the younger investors said, his tone suggesting amusement rather than respect. "PhD in computer science from MIT, I said. "Specialization in machine learning and autonomous systems." Marcus shifted beside me, and I could feel his tension. He hadn't expected me to lead with my credentials. I opened the technical file and brought up the core algorithm architecture. "What you're seeing here is a multi-layered neural network that integrates real-time data streams with predictive modeling. The innovation isn't in any single component, it's in how they communicate with each other." I walked them through it, layer by layer, explaining the decision logic that allowed the system to adapt without human intervention. I showed them the stress tests, the edge cases, the elegant solutions to problems that would have broken conventional systems. And as I spoke, I felt something shift in the room, a subtle change in attention, in posture, in the quality of the questions being asked. "This is remarkable work," Hartley said, leaning forward. "How long did it take to develop?" 18 months, I said, full-time. "And you did this while working on other projects?" "No," I said quietly. "This was my only project, my only focus." The sharp-eyed woman investor glanced at Marcus, then back at me. "So you're the primary architect of this system?" It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes." Marcus cleared his throat. "Dr. Chen has been an invaluable part of the development process. I built it," I said, and my voice was steady now, clear. "Every line of code, every model, every test, I built it." The room went silent. Hartley sat back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Chen," he said, addressing Marcus, "when you said internal leadership, were you referring to Dr. Chen's work?" Marcus's face had gone pale. "The project required oversight, strategic direction. That's not what I asked." The silence stretched out, painful and exposing. "Dr. Chen," Hartley said, turning to me, "do you have documentation of your development process? Design notes, commit logs, anything that establishes timeline and authorship?" "Yes," I said. "Everything is documented. I keep detailed records. I'd like to see them." Marcus tried to smile, tried to regain control of the room. "I'm not sure that's necessary. We're all on the same team here, Mr. Chen," the sharp-eyed woman said, her voice cold. "I think you should step outside." Marcus looked at her, then at me, then at Hartley. His mouth opened, closed. He'd built his career on moments like this, on confidence, on presence, on the assumption that he belonged in rooms where decisions were made. But now the room had turned against him, and he had no algorithm to save him, no code to hide behind. "This is highly irregular," he said. "So is misrepresenting authorship to potential investors," Hartley replied. "We'll continue this conversation with Dr. Chen alone." Marcus left, and the door clicked shut behind him with a sound like finality. I stood there, my laptop still open, my hands shaking slightly. I'd imagined this moment before, the moment when someone finally saw my work, really saw it, but I never imagined it would feel like this. Not triumphant, not victorious, just exposed. "Dr. Chen," Hartley said gently, "why don't you sit down?" I sat in Marcus's chair, still warm from his presence. "Now," Hartley said, "tell us everything." I waited for the elevator in the empty hallway, my laptop bag packed with 3 years of work that suddenly felt both heavier and lighter than before. The meeting had lasted another 2 hours. I'd shown them everything: my design notes, my commit history, my correspondence with Marcus where he'd explicitly asked me to keep the technical details internal and let him handle the business side. I'd watched their faces change as they realized what had happened, what Marcus had tried to do. They'd asked me to step outside while they made some calls. Now the building felt too quiet, too still. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see the investors still talking, their phones pressed to their ears. I didn't know what they were saying. I didn't know what happened next. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, and I stepped inside. As the doors began to close, I heard footsteps, quick, urgent. A hand caught the door, and Hartley stepped into the elevator with me. "Dr. Chen," he said, "we need to talk." The doors closed, sealing us in together, and the elevator began its descent into whatever came next. The elevator descended in silence, the numbers ticking down on the digital display above the door. Hartley stood beside me, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. I could see our reflections in the polished steel doors, him in his tailored suit, me in my off-the-rack blazer that suddenly felt cheaper than it had this morning. "That was quite a presentation," he finally said. I didn't know how to respond. Was he angry that I'd contradicted Marcus? Disappointed that the pitch had fallen apart? I'd spent 3 years learning to read the subtle signals in rooms like these, learning when to speak and when to stay silent, and right now every instinct told me to wait. The elevator reached the lobby, and Hartley gestured for me to follow him. We walked past the security desk, past a fountain with its endless of water, out into the San Francisco afternoon where the fog was just beginning to roll in from the bay. He led me to a coffee shop across the street, the kind of place where startup founders made deals on napkins and venture capitalists pretended to be casual. We sat at a table by the window, and he ordered 2 espressos without asking what I wanted. "Dr. Chen," he said, once the coffee arrived, "I've been investing in tech companies for 23 years. I've seen a lot of pitches, a lot of products, a lot of people trying to sell me things they don't fully understand. But what happened in that room today that was different?" I wrapped my hands around the small cup, feeling its warmth. "Your algorithm," he continued, "is genuinely innovative. The architecture is elegant. The application is clear, and the market potential is substantial. But that's not what interests me most. What interests you?" I asked quietly. "The fact that you built it alone. The fact that you documented everything. The fact that when your boss tried to take credit for your work, you had the courage to speak up." He leaned forward. "Do you know how rare that is?" I thought about all the times I hadn't spoken up. All the meetings where Marcus had presented our work and I'd stood silent in the back. All the emails where I'd led him at his name to my reports, telling myself it was politics, it was strategy, it was the price of being taken seriously later. "It didn't feel like courage," I said. "It felt like I didn't have a choice anymore. That's usually when courage happens." He took a sip of his espresso. "I called Vantage's CEO while you were waiting. Had a very interesting conversation about employment contracts, intellectual property rights, and what happens when a director of innovation misrepresents the source of an innovation." My heart started beating faster. "What did they say?" "They're conducting an internal review. Marcus has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome." He paused. "They also want to know if you're planning to sue." Sue? The word felt foreign in my mouth. For intellectual property theft, hostile work environment, gender discrimination, take your pick. You'd have a strong case. I looked out the window at the street, at the people walking past with their phones and their coffee cups and their lives that seemed so much simpler than mine had become in the last 3 hours. I'd never wanted to be the person who sued, who made a scene, who turned a professional disagreement into a legal battle. "I just want my work to be recognized," I said. "I want to build things that matter." Hartley nodded slowly. "Then let me ask you a different question. What if you didn't need Vantage systems? What if you could build your own company, with your own team, with investors who actually understand what you've created?" I stared at him. "Are you offering to fund me?" "I'm offering to have a conversation about it. My firm specializes in early-stage technical ventures. We look for founders who have both the technical expertise and the vision to build something lasting." He pulled out a business card, slid it across the table. "But I need to know, are you someone who wants to build a company? Or are you someone who wants to build algorithms and let someone else handle the business side?" It was the question I'd been avoiding for 3 years. The question that had kept me at Vantage even when I knew Marcus was taking credit, even when I knew I deserved better. Because building algorithms was safe. Building algorithms was what I knew. Building a company meant stepping into rooms where I didn't know the rules, making decisions that affected other people's lives, becoming the kind of person who pitched instead of standing in the back. "I don't know," I said honestly. "That's a better answer than most people give me." He finished his espresso. "Take the weekend. Think about it. Look at your documentation, your code, your 18 months of work, and ask yourself what you really want to do with it. Then call me on Monday." He stood up, buttoned his jacket. "One more thing, Dr. Chen. That moment in the conference room, when you said I built it, that wasn't just courage. That was ownership. And ownership is what separates people who work for other people from people who build something of their own." He left, and I sat alone with my coffee going cold and his business card on the table between us. I didn't go back to the office that day. I couldn't face Marcus. Couldn't face the questions from co-workers who would have already heard what happened. Couldn't face my desk where I'd spent so many late nights building something that someone else had tried to claim. Instead, I went home to my apartment in the Mission District, the one-bedroom place with the leaky faucet and the view of a brick wall that I'd been telling myself was temporary for 3 years. I set my laptop on the kitchen table and opened the folder that contained everything, every version of the algorithm, every test result, every design decision documented with timestamps and notes. It was all there. Proof of authorship, proof of innovation, proof that I was exactly who I'd claimed to be in that conference room. But proof wasn't the same as certainty. I made tea and sat by the window as the fog rolled in thicker, erasing the city block by block. My phone buzzed with messages from coworkers, from my sister, from my mother, who somehow already knew something had happened even though I hadn't told her. I ignored them all. What did I want? The question felt too big, too complicated. I'd spent my entire adult life working toward a goal that had always been just slightly out of reach. Finish a degree, get the job, build something important, get recognized. But recognition had always been something that happened to other people, people who looked different or talked different or knew how to play the game in ways I'd never learned. I pulled up my email and found the message Marcus had sent me 6 months ago, right after he'd been hired. "Sarah," it read, "I'm excited to work with your team. I've heard great things about the projects in development, and I'm looking forward to helping bring them to market. Let's schedule a time to discuss how we can collaborate effectively." Collaborate. That's what he'd called it. I'd been so grateful then, so eager to have someone in leadership who seemed interested in my work. I'd shown him everything, explained everything, trusted that his interest was genuine. And he'd taken that trust and turned it into a pitch deck with his name on it. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was Jessica Park, one of the other engineers at Vantage, someone I'd always liked but never quite trusted enough to be honest with. I answered. "Hey, Sarah, what the hell happened?" Jessica's voice was urgent, almost excited. "Marcus got escorted out of the building an hour ago. People are saying you accused him of stealing your work in front of investors. Is that true? It's more complicated than that, is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you finally did what the rest of us have been too scared to do." She paused. "He's been taking credit for my database optimization for months. I just never had the proof or the guts to call him out. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. He did it to you too. To me, to Kevin, to have the engineering team. He's been running this same place since he got here. Find someone doing good work, offer to help them, present it to leadership, then slowly erase them from the narrative." Her voice got quieter. "We all knew. We just didn't know what to do about it." After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment and thought about all the other engineers who'd stayed silent, who'd let Marcus take credit because speaking up felt too risky, too complicated, too likely to backfire. I thought about the sharp-eyed investor who'd asked the right questions. I thought about Hartley's business card, still in my pocket. And I thought about the algorithm. My algorithm, sitting in files on servers at Vantage Systems, waiting to be either recognized or buried depending on what I decided to do next. The fog had completely obscured the view now. The city was gone, replaced by gray nothing. I opened my laptop and started writing an email to Hartley. Then I deleted it. Then I started again. By midnight, I still hadn't sent anything. Saturday morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the fog. I woke up on my couch, my laptop still open on the coffee table, the unsent email to Hartley still blinking on the screen. My phone showed 43 unread messages. I scrolled through them, co-workers asking what happened, my sister demanding I call her immediately, my mother's characteristically brief text that just said, "Are you okay?" And then, buried among them, an email from Vantage's HR department requesting a meeting on Monday morning to discuss recent events and next steps. I made coffee and stood at my kitchen window, watching the city wake up. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably doing the same thing, probably crafting his own narrative about what had happened, probably calling lawyers or former colleagues or anyone who might help him salvage his reputation. But I wasn't thinking about Marcus anymore. I was thinking about Jessica's voice on the phone, about the other engineers who'd stayed silent. I was thinking about Hartley's question, was I someone who wanted to build a company, or someone who wanted to build algorithms and let someone else handle the business side? I'd always told myself I was the latter, that I was a technologist, not an entrepreneur, that my value was in the code, not in the pitch. But standing there with my coffee going cold, I realized that distinction had been a kind of hiding, a way to avoid the risk of being fully visible, fully responsible, fully myself. My sister called at 9. I let it ring twice before answering. "Sarah, What the actual hell? Emma's voice was sharp with worry and something that might have been pride. Mom said you had some kind of confrontation with your boss in front of investors. Are you okay? Are you fired? Do you need a lawyer? I'm fine, I said. I'm not fired. I don't think I need a lawyer. You don't think? Sarah, if someone stole your work, they didn't steal it exactly. They just tried to take credit for it. And I stopped them. There was a pause. You stopped them? You? The person who wouldn't even correct a waiter when they got your order wrong? I almost smiled. Yeah, me. Tell me everything. So I did. I told her about the pitch, about Marcus's presentation, about the moment when I'd said I built it and watched a room turn. I told her about Hartley's offer, about the business card in my pocket, about the email I couldn't seem to send. When I finished, Emma was quiet for a long moment. Sarah, she finally said, do you remember when you were 12 and you built that robot for the science fair? The one that could sort recycling? Yeah, and you were so excited about it. But then Tommy Richardson said girls couldn't build robots, that your dad must have done it for you. And you got so upset you almost didn't present it. I remembered. I'd cried in the bathroom, had wanted to withdraw from the competition entirely. But she didn't withdraw, Emma continued. You went up there and you demonstrated every single function. And you explained every single decision. And you made Tommy Richardson look like an idiot. And you won first place. That was different. I was a kid. Was it? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds exactly the same. Someone tried to take credit for your work, and you proved them wrong. Her voice softened. The question is, what are you going to do now that you've won? After we hung up, I pulled out Hartley's business card and stared at it. Richard Hartley, managing partner, Hartley Ventures. A phone number, an email address, a simple white card that represented a door I could walk through or leave closed. I thought about my algorithm, about the 18 months I'd spent building it. But more than that, I thought about all the other algorithms I could build, all the problems I could solve, all the systems I could create if I wasn't spending my energy fighting to be recognized for work I'd already done. I opened my laptop and pulled up the email I'd started the night before. I deleted everything I'd written and started fresh. Mr. Hartley, I typed. Thank you for the conversation yesterday. I've spent the last 18 hours thinking about your question, and I have an answer. I want to build a company, not because I'm sure I'll succeed, and not because I have all the answers, but because I'm tired of letting other people control the narrative of my own work. I'd like to schedule a time to discuss what that might look like. Best regards, Dr. Sarah Chen. I read it 3 times, changed best regards to sincerely, then changed it back. Then, before I could overthink it anymore, I hit send. The email disappeared into the void of the internet, and I sat there feeling simultaneously terrified and lighter than I'd felt in years. My phone buzzed almost immediately. I looked down, expecting a response from Hartley, but it was a text from an unknown number. Dr. Chen, this is Marcus. We need to talk. What you did yesterday was unprofessional and damaging to both our careers. I think we can resolve this privately without involving lawyers or making this a bigger issue than it needs to be. Call me. I stared at the message, at the casual assumption that I would call him, that I would help him smooth this over, that I would prioritize his career over my own integrity. I deleted the message without responding. The weekend passed in a strange suspension of time. I didn't hear back from Hartley, which either meant he was thinking about my email or had decided I wasn't worth the investment. I didn't hear anything more from Vantage, which meant Monday's meeting was still happening and I had no idea what it would bring. I spent Saturday afternoon going through my documentation, organizing everything into a clear timeline of development. I had commit logs showing every change I'd made to the code, emails showing my correspondence with clients and stakeholders, design documents with my name and my notes. If Vantage wanted to claim ownership of the algorithm, which they legally could, since I'd built it as their employee, they'd have to acknowledge who actually built it. On Sunday, I met Emma for lunch at a small Vietnamese restaurant in the Tenderloin. She arrived with her laptop and a determined expression. Okay, she said, before I could even order. I've been doing research. If you're really thinking about starting a company, you need to understand what you're getting into. She pulled up a spreadsheet because, of course, Emma had made a spreadsheet showing startup costs, funding timelines, equity structures, and a dozen other things I'd never thought about. This is assuming you can get seed funding, she said, scrolling through the numbers, which it sounds like this Hartley guy might provide. But you'll need more than just money. You'll need a team, a business plan, a go-to-market strategy, Emma. I interrupted gently. I haven't even decided if I'm doing this yet. She looked at me over her laptop. Haven't you? I thought about the email I'd sent, about the way I'd felt when I hit send. Maybe. Then you need to be prepared. Because if you walk into a meeting with an investor and you don't know the basics of how to structure a company, he's going to think you're just a smart engineer who's in over her head. Maybe I am. Maybe. But you're also someone who built an algorithm that multiple venture capitalists think is worth millions of dollars. So maybe you're more than that too. We spent the rest of lunch going through Emma's research. She'd found articles about women in tech, about the funding gap, about the statistics that said female founders received less than 3% of venture capital despite often outperforming their male counterparts. She'd found case studies of successful technical founders and case studies of technical founders who'd failed because they'd trusted the wrong business partners. The point, Emma said, as we finished our pho, is that you can do this, but you have to go in with your eyes open. You have to know what you're worth, and you have to be willing to fight for it. I'm not good at fighting. You weren't good at fighting. Past tense. She closed her laptop. The Sarah who stood in the back of conference rooms and let her boss take credit she wasn't good at fighting. But the Sarah who looked a room full of investors in the eye and said, I built it. She seems pretty good at it to me. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. I dressed carefully, the same black blazer, but this time paired with a shirt I actually liked. A deep blue that Emma had bought me for my birthday and I'd never worn because it felt too bold, too noticeable. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the person looking back. Same face, same hair pulled back in the same practical style, but something in the eyes was different. Something harder and softer at the same time. My phone buzzed. An email from Hartley. Dr. Chen, thank you for your message. I appreciate your honesty and your clarity. I'd like to schedule a meeting for this week to discuss terms. I'm also connecting you with my partner, Jennifer Wu, who specializes in technical ventures. She'll want to do her own due diligence on the algorithm and the market opportunity. Are you available Wednesday afternoon? Best, Richard. I read it twice, then 3 times. He'd said yes. Or at least he'd said maybe, which in the world of venture capital might be the same thing. I responded confirming Wednesday, then checked the time. I had 30 minutes before my meeting with Vantage hour. The Vantage Systems office felt different when I walked in. People looked at me differently, some with curiosity, some with what might have been respect, some with the careful neutrality of co-workers who didn't want to get involved in whatever drama was unfolding. Jessica caught me at the elevator. Hey, she said quietly, good luck in there. And Sarah, thank you. For what? For doing what the rest of us should have done months ago. The HR office was on the 10th floor, a sterile space with motivational posters about teamwork and innovation that suddenly felt deeply ironic. I was met by Patricia Reeves, the head of HR, and David Kim, Vantage's general counsel. They both stood when I entered, which immediately told me this wasn't a standard meeting. Dr. Chen, Patricia said, gesturing to a chair. Thank you for coming in. We wanted to discuss Friday's events and talk about next steps. I sat down, my laptop bag in my lap like a shield. David pulled out a folder. We've completed our preliminary review of the situation with Marcus Chan. We've examined the documentation you provided to the investors, as well as internal communications and project records. We've also spoken with several other members of the engineering team. I waited. It's clear, he continued, that there were significant misrepresentations made regarding the authorship and development of the supply chain algorithm. Mr. Chen presented work as his own that was, in fact, primarily developed by you, entirely developed by me, I said quietly. Yes, David agreed, entirely developed by you, which puts the company in a difficult position. Patricia leaned forward. Sarah, we want to make this right. We value your contributions to Vantage, and we recognize that you haven't been properly credited for your work. We'd like to discuss how we can remedy that situation, Marcus has been terminated, David added, effective immediately. We're also reviewing our internal processes for project attribution and credit to ensure this doesn't happen again. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant, but instead, I just felt tired. What do you want from me? I asked. Patricia and David exchanged a glance. We want you to stay, Patricia said. We want to promote you to Marcus's position Director of Innovation. We'll give you a significant raise, equity in the company, and full control over your projects and how they're presented. We'll also issue a formal acknowledgement of your authorship of the algorithm, both internally and to our investors. It was everything I'd wanted 3 days ago. Recognition, authority, the position I'd earned. And if I don't want to stay? I asked. Another glance between them. Then we'd need to discuss the intellectual property situation, David said carefully. The Saturday morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the fog. I woke up on my couch, my laptop still open on the coffee table, the unsent email to Hartley still blinking in the draft folder. My phone showed 43 unread messages. I scrolled through them, coworkers asking what happened, my sister demanding I call her immediately, my mother sending a string of concerned emojis she'd only recently learned how to use, and one message from an unknown number, sent at 2 in the morning. Dr. Chen, this is Richard Hartley. No pressure on Monday's conversation, but I wanted you to know I showed your algorithm to my technical team last night. They're calling it the most elegant supply chain solution they've seen in 5 years. Whatever you decide to do next, don't let anyone convince you that you're not qualified to do it. I read it 3 times, then set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. Not qualified. That's what Marcus had implied every time he'd positioned himself as the visionary and me as the technical support. That's what the investors had assumed when they'd looked at me standing in the back of the room. That's what I'd almost believed myself, until the moment when staying silent became more painful than speaking up. I made coffee and opened my laptop. The algorithm code filled the screen, thousands of lines of logic and decision trees and elegant solutions to impossible problems. I'd written every single one. I'd tested every edge case. I'd broken it and rebuilt it and made it better each time. This was mine. The realization felt both obvious and revolutionary. For 3 years, I'd been thinking of my work as something that belonged to Vantage Systems, something I'd created for them, something they had the right to present however they wanted. But intellectual property law didn't work that way. The code I'd written on company time belonged to the company. Yes, but the knowledge, the expertise, the ability to build something like this again and better, that belonged to me. I opened a new document and started writing. Not an email to Hartley. Not a resignation letter to Vantage. Something else entirely. I wrote down every problem my algorithm solved. Every industry it could transform. Every company that would pay for a solution like this. I wrote down the names of engineers I trusted. People like Jessica who'd been working in Marcus's shadow. People who might want to build something real instead of watching someone else take credit for their work. I wrote for 3 hours straight. And by the time I stopped, I had the outline of something that looked like a business plan. My phone rang. My sister Emily. I'd been avoiding her calls, but I knew she wouldn't stop until I answered. Finally, she said when I picked up, "Mom's been freaking out. She saw something on LinkedIn about Vantage Systems conducting an internal review and assumed you got fired." I didn't get fired. Then what happened? Because the rumor mill is saying you exposed your boss for stealing your work in front of a room full of investors, which sounds very dramatic and very unlike you. I walked to the window, looked out at the street below where people were going about their normal Saturday routines, coffee runs, dog walks, lives uncomplicated by questions about intellectual property and venture capital. "It's complicated," I said. "Sarah, you always say things are complicated when you don't want to talk about them." Emily's voice softened. What actually happened? So I told her about the pitch, about Marcus's lies, about standing up and saying I built it in front of everyone, about Hartley's offer, about the business card in my pocket, about the email I couldn't bring myself to send. Emily was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Do you remember when you were applying to grad schools and Dad told you that you should get a teaching certificate instead? that computer science was too competitive, too male-dominated, that she'd never make it past the gatekeepers. Saturday morning arrived with pale sunlight cutting through the fog. I woke up on my couch, my laptop still open on the coffee table, the unsent email to Hartley still blinking on the screen. My phone showed 43 unread messages. I scrolled through them, co-workers asking what happened, my sister demanding details, 2 messages from HR at Vantage asking me to call them immediately, and one from a number I didn't recognize. I opened the unknown number first. Dr. Chen, this is Amanda Reeves from TechCrunch. I heard about what happened at your pitch meeting yesterday and I'd love to talk to you about it. This kind of story, women in tech having their work stolen by male supervisors, is exactly what we cover. Please call me. I stared at the message. A story. That's what my 18 months of work had become. Not an algorithm, not an innovation, not a solution to a real problem, just a story about gender and theft and drama that would get clicks and comments and outrage that would fade in 48 hours. I deleted the message without responding. My sister called at 9. I let it ring twice before answering. Sarah, what the hell? Emma's voice was sharp with worry and something that might have been pride. Mom saw something on LinkedIn about Vantage conducting an internal review. Are you okay? Are you fired? Do you need a lawyer? I'm not fired, I said. At least not yet. Then what happened? Because the version I'm hearing sounds insane. So I told her about the pitch, about Marcus presenting my work as his own, about the moment when I'd stood up and said I built it in front of everyone, about Hartley's offer, about the business card still sitting on my kitchen counter, about the email I couldn't bring myself to send. When I finished, Emma was quiet for a long moment. Sarah, she finally said, do you remember when you were 12 and you built that sorting robot for the science fair? The recycling one? Yeah. And Tommy Richardson told everyone that Dad must have built it for you because girls couldn't do engineering. And you were so upset you almost withdrew from the competition. I remembered. I'd cried in the school bathroom, had wanted to disappear entirely. But you didn't withdraw, Emma continued. You went up there and demonstrated every single function. You explained every decision. You made Tommy Richardson look like the idiot he was. And you won first place. That was different. I was a kid. Was it different? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds exactly the same. Someone tried to take credit for your work, and you proved them wrong. Her voice softened. The question is, what are you going to do now that everyone knows the truth? After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with Hartley's business card in one hand and my phone in the other. The unsent email stared at me from my laptop screen, cursor blinking like a heartbeat. What did I want? For 3 years, I'd wanted recognition. I'd wanted Marcus to acknowledge my work, wanted leadership to see my value, wanted to be invited into rooms where decisions were made instead of standing in the back taking notes. But now, sitting in the silence of my apartment with the fog pressing against the windows, I realized that wasn't enough anymore. Recognition from Vantage Systems felt like asking permission to exist in a space that had never wanted me there in the first place. I opened my laptop and deleted the email I'd been trying to write. Then I started fresh. Mr. Hartley, I typed. Thank you for the conversation on Friday and for your message this morning. I've spent the weekend thinking about your question whether I want to build a company or just build algorithms. The answer is, I want to build a company. Not because I'm certain I'll succeed, and not because I have all the business experience I need, but because I'm done letting other people control the narrative of my own work. I'd like to meet this week to discuss what that might look like. Dr. Sarah Chen. I read it once, then hit send before I could change my mind. The email disappeared into the void, and I sat there feeling simultaneously terrified and lighter than I'd felt in years. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Not Hartley, a text from an unknown number. Dr. Chen, this is Marcus. We need to talk. What happened on Friday was a misunderstanding that's been blown out of proportion. I think we can resolve this privately without involving lawyers or making this worse for both of us. Call me. I stared at the message, at the casual assumption that I would call him, that I would help him smooth this over, that I would prioritize his reputation over my own integrity. I blocked the number without responding. Sunday passed in a strange suspension. I didn't hear back from Hartley, which either meant he was thinking about my email or had decided I wasn't worth the investment. I didn't hear anything more from Vantage, which meant Monday's reckoning was still coming, and I had no idea what form it would take. I spent the afternoon organizing my documentation, every commit log, every design document, every email that proved the algorithm was mine. If Vantage wanted to fight me on intellectual property, I'd be ready. If they wanted to offer me Marcus's job, I'd be ready for that too. Emma came over in the evening with Thai food and her laptop. "Okay," she said, setting containers on my kitchen table. "If you're serious about this startup thing, we need to talk about what you're walking into." She pulled up a spreadsheet because, of course, Emma had made a spreadsheet showing startup costs, funding timelines, equity structures, legal considerations I'd never thought about. "This is assuming you get seed funding from Hartley," she said, scrolling through numbers. "But you'll need more than money. You'll need a team, a business plan, a go-to-market strategy, legal protection for your IP." "Emma," I interrupted gently, "I haven't even decided if I'm doing this." She looked at me over her laptop. "Haven't you?" I thought about the email I'd sent, about the way my chest had felt lighter the moment I hit send. "Maybe. Then you need to be prepared. Because if you walk into a meeting with a venture capitalist and you don't know the basics of company structure, he's going to think you're just a smart engineer who's in over her head. Maybe I am. Maybe. But you're also someone who built something that multiple investors think is worth millions. So maybe you're more than that too." We spent the rest of the evening going through Emma's research. She'd found articles about women in tech, about the funding gap, about statistics showing that female founders received less than 3% of venture capital despite often outperforming their male counterparts. She'd found case studies of successful technical founders and case studies of brilliant engineers who'd failed because they'd trusted the wrong business partners. "The point," Emma said as we finished our pad thai, "is that you can do this, but you have to go in with your eyes open. You have to know what you're worth, and you have to be willing to fight for it every single day." "I'm not good at fighting." "You weren't good at fighting." Past tense. She closed her laptop. The Sarah who stood in the back of conference rooms and let Marcus take credit she wasn't good at fighting. But the Sarah who looked a room full of investors in the eye and said, "I built it." She seems pretty damn good at it to me. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. I dressed carefully, the same black blazer, but this time with a deep blue blouse Emma had bought me for my birthday, one I'd never worn because it felt too bold, too noticeable. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. Same face, same dark hair pulled into the same practical ponytail, but something in the eyes had changed, something harder and softer at the same time. My phone buzzed. An email from Hartley. "Dr. Chen, thank you for your message. I appreciate your clarity and your courage. Let's meet Wednesday at 2 p.m. at my office in Palo Alto. I'm also connecting you with my partner, Jennifer Wu, who specializes in technical ventures and will want to do her own due diligence on the algorithm. She'll be joining us. In the meantime, think about what you want to build, not just the technology, but the company, the team, the impact. See you Wednesday." Richard Hartley. I read it 3 times. He'd said yes. Or at least, he'd said maybe, which in venture capital might be the same thing. I had 2 hours before my meeting with Vantage hour. The office felt different when I walked in. People looked at me differently, some with curiosity, some with what might have been respect, a few with the careful neutrality of co-workers who didn't want to get involved in whatever was unfolding. Jessica caught me at the elevator. "Hey," she said quietly, "good luck in there." "And Sarah, thank you." "For what?" "For doing what the rest of us should have done a long time ago." The HR office was on the 10th floor, all glass walls and motivational posters about innovation and teamwork that suddenly felt deeply ironic. I was met by Patricia Reeves, head of HR, and David Kim, Vantage's general counsel. They both stood when I entered, which told me immediately this wasn't a standard meeting. "Dr. Chen," Patricia said, gesturing to a chair, "thank you for coming in. We wanted to discuss Friday's events and talk about the path forward." I sat down, my laptop bag in my lap like armor. David opened a folder. "We've completed our preliminary investigation into the situation with Marcus Chen. We've reviewed the documentation you provided to the investors, examined internal communications and project records, and interviewed several members of the engineering team." I waited. It's clear, he continued, that there were significant misrepresentations made regarding the authorship and development of the supply chain algorithm. Marcus presented work as his own that was, in fact, entirely developed by you. Yes, I said simply. Patricia leaned forward. Sarah, we want to make this right. We value your contributions to Vantage, and we recognize that you haven't received proper credit for your work. We'd like to discuss how we can remedy that. Marcus has been terminated, David added, effective immediately. We're also reviewing our internal processes for project attribution to ensure this doesn't happen again. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant, but instead, I just felt tired. What do you want from me? I asked. Patricia and David exchanged a glance. We want you to stay, Patricia said. We'd like to offer you Marcus's position Director of Innovation. Significant raise, equity package, full control over your projects and how they're presented. We'll also issue a formal acknowledgement of your authorship of the algorithm, both internally and in all communications with investors and clients. It was everything I'd wanted a week ago. Recognition, authority, the position I'd earned through 3 years of invisible work. And if I don't want to stay? I asked. Another glance between them. Then we need to discuss intellectual property, David said carefully. The algorithm was developed on company time, using company resources. Legally, it belongs to Vantage Systems. If you choose to leave, you'd be bound by your non-compete agreement and confidentiality clauses. You couldn't work on similar technology for any competitor for 18 months. There it was, the trap I'd been expecting. But, Patricia added quickly, we'd prefer not to go that route. We'd prefer to find a solution that works for everyone. I looked at them both, Patricia with her concerned expression, David with his legal folder full of contracts I'd signed when I was 25 and desperate for a job that would let me build something meaningful. Can I have 24 hours to think about it? I asked. Of course, Patricia said. But Sarah, we really hope you'll stay. You're exactly the kind of leader this company needs. I walked out of that office and straight to the bathroom, where I locked myself in a stall and tried to breathe through the tightness in my chest. They wanted me to stay. They were offering me everything I'd worked for. But they were also reminding me that the algorithm, my algorithm, built from my ideas and my code and my 18 months of sleepless nights legally belonged to them. That if I left, I'd be starting from zero. That all my work, all my innovation, would stay behind in a company that had let Marcus Chen take credit for it until the moment I'd forced them to acknowledge the truth. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. How did it go? I typed back. They offered me Marcus's job. 3 dots appeared immediately then. And I don't know if I want it. Then you already know your answer. I left the Vantage building and walked without direction, my feet carrying me through the financial district while my mind tried to process what had just happened. They'd offered me everything, the title, the money, the recognition, and somehow it felt like nothing at all. My phone rang. Hartley. Dr. Chen, he said when I answered. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. No, it's fine. I just left a meeting with my company's hour. How did that go? I stopped walking, found myself standing in front of a coffee shop with floor-to-ceiling windows. Inside, people sat with their laptops, building things, pitching things, becoming things I hadn't known I wanted to become until 3 days ago. They offered me my boss's job, I said. Director of Innovation. Everything I thought I wanted. Congratulations, Hartley said, and I could hear the question in his voice. But if I take it, I'm still building for them. Still working within their structure, their vision, their control. And the algorithm legally, it stays theirs whether I'm there or not. That's typically how employment contracts work, yes. So even if I leave, even if I start my own company, I can't work on anything similar for 18 months. I'd be starting from zero. Hartley was quiet for a moment. Dr. Chen, Sarah, can I tell you something I've learned in 23 years of investing in startups? Please, the technology matters. The market matters. The business model matters. But none of it matters as much as the founder. I've seen brilliant technology fail because the founder didn't have the courage to fight for their vision. And I've seen mediocre technology succeed because the founder refused to give up, refused to compromise, refused to let anyone tell them they weren't qualified to build what they knew needed to exist. I watched a woman inside the coffee shop close her laptop with a satisfied expression, like she'd just solved something important. What I saw in that conference room on Friday, Hartley continued, wasn't just a smart engineer who'd built a good algorithm. I saw someone who finally understood her own value. Someone who was done asking for permission. That's the person I want to invest in, not the algorithm you. But I can't use the algorithm, I said. Not for 18 months. So build something better. Build something different. You did it once, you can do it again. And this time, you'll own it from the beginning. Every line of code, every decision, every success. Yours. After we hung up, I stood on that street corner for a long time, watching the city move around me. Somewhere in one of these buildings, Marcus was probably crafting his comeback story, probably calling former colleagues, probably convinced he could salvage his reputation. Somewhere else, the investors from Friday's meeting were deciding whether to pull their interest from Vantage or wait to see how the situation resolved. And here I was, standing at a crossroads I'd never expected to reach. I pulled out my phone and called Emma. I'm going to do it, I said when she answered. Do what? Start the company. Build something new. Walk away from Vantage and everything I built there. Sarah, I know it's risky. I know I might fail. I know I'll be starting over with nothing but my expertise and whatever funding Hartley's willing to provide. But Emma, if I stay at Vantage, if I take that promotion and that office and that title, I'll spend the rest of my career wondering what I could have built if I'd been brave enough to try. My sister was quiet for a moment. Then she said, okay, then let's do this right. Come over tonight. We'll build you a real business plan, not just my weekend research. We'll figure out exactly what you need and exactly what you're worth. And tomorrow, you're going to walk into Hartley's office and negotiate like someone who knows she's about to change an entire industry. I don't know how to negotiate like that. Then it's a good thing you have a sister who's a corporate lawyer. I'll teach you. Wednesday afternoon, I drove down to Palo Alto in my 10-year-old Honda, feeling absurdly out of place among the Teslas and BMWs in Hartley Ventures parking lot. I'd spent the previous 2 days with Emma, building a presentation that outlined not just what I wanted to build, but why it mattered, who would pay for it, and how I plan to scale it. I'd also spent those 2 days researching Jennifer Wu, Hartley's partner. She had a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford, had founded 2 successful startups before becoming an investor, and had a reputation for asking questions that exposed every weakness in a business plan. If I was going to convince her I could do this, I needed to be better prepared than I'd ever been for anything. The Hartley Ventures office was nothing like I'd expected. No sleek glass and steel, no motivational posters, no open floor plan designed to look innovative. Just a converted Victorian house with comfortable furniture and walls covered in photos of companies they'd funded. Some I recognized as billion-dollar successes, others I'd never heard of. Hartley met me at the door. Sarah, come in. Jennifer's already here. Jennifer Wu was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and an easy smile. She shook my hand firmly. Dr. Chen, Richard's been telling me about your algorithm. I'm impressed. Thank you. I'm also curious. She continued as we sat down in what looked like a living room converted into a conference space. Richard said you're not planning to build on that algorithm, that you're starting fresh. Why? This was the test. I could feel it. Because the algorithm belongs to Vantage Systems, I said. I built it on their time with their resources under a contract that gives them ownership. I could fight them in court, spend years and hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to prove I deserve the rights to my own work. Or I could accept that I learned everything I needed to learn from building it, and use that knowledge to build something better. Something better, Jennifer repeated. That's ambitious. The supply chain algorithm solved one problem in one industry, I said. But while I was building it, I identified 17 other applications for the same core principles: predictive modeling that adapts in real time to complex, multivariable systems, healthcare logistics, energy grid management, agricultural supply chains in developing countries. The algorithm I built for Vantage was proof of concept. What I want to build now is the platform that makes all of those applications possible. I pulled out my laptop and walked them through the presentation Emma and I had built. I showed them the market research, the potential clients, the competitive landscape. I showed them my timeline for development, my plan for hiring a team, my strategy for protecting intellectual property from day one. And I showed them something else, a working prototype I'd built over the past 2 days, using entirely different code and entirely different approaches than the Vantage algorithm. It was rough, incomplete, barely functional, but it proved I could do this again, that I could build something from nothing, something that belonged entirely to me. When I finished, Jennifer and Hartley exchanged a look I couldn't read. "That prototype," Jennifer said. "You built that in 2 days?" "Yes. While also preparing this presentation and presumably dealing with the fallout from your former employer?" "Yes." She leaned back in her chair, a small smile on her face. "Richard, I think we need to talk numbers." The next hour was unlike anything I'd experienced. They asked me questions I'd never considered about market timing, about regulatory challenges, about what would happen if a competitor launched something similar. Emma had prepared me for most of it, but some questions I had to answer with honest uncertainty. With "I don't know yet, but here's how I'd find out." And then Hartley said, "Here's what we're thinking. Seed round of $2 million. We'd take 20% equity. You'd retain 70%. And we'd reserve 10% for future hires and advisors. We'd also want Jennifer on your board, and we'd want quarterly reviews for the first year." I'd researched enough to know this was a good offer. Better than good, it was the kind of deal that gave founders real control while still providing serious capital. "There's one condition," Jennifer added. "You need to resign from Vantage immediately. Not 2 weeks' notice. Not a transition period. Tomorrow. We can't have any ambiguity about intellectual property or non-compete issues. Clean break. Fresh start." My heart was pounding. "Tomorrow. Tomorrow," Hartley confirmed. "I know it's fast. I know it's scary. But Sarah, if you're going to do this, you need to commit completely. No safety net. No backup plan. Just you and your vision and the belief that you can build something extraordinary." I thought about my desk at Vantage, about the 3 years I'd spent there, about the algorithm that would stay behind when I left. I thought about Marcus's office that could have been mine, about the title and the salary and the equity in a company that had never truly valued me until I'd forced them to. And I thought about the prototype on my laptop, rough and imperfect and entirely mine. "Okay," I said. "Tomorrow." I submitted my resignation to Vantage at 9 a.m. Thursday morning, via email, effective immediately. By 10 a.m., Patricia from HR was calling, asking me to reconsider, offering to improve their previous offer. By 11, David the lawyer was sending carefully worded emails about non-compete clauses and intellectual property agreements, reminding me of my legal obligations. I forwarded everything to the lawyer Hartley had connected me with, then turned off my phone and sat in my apartment with my laptop and a cup of coffee and the overwhelming realization that I'd just walked away from everything I'd built. My phone still off sat on the table like a bomb waiting to explode with messages and calls and consequences I wasn't ready to face. Instead, I opened my laptop and started coding. The platform I'd described to Hartley and Jennifer existed only in concept and in the rough prototype I'd built. Now I needed to make it real. I needed to prove to myself, more than anyone else, that I could do this again. That Friday's moment of courage hadn't been a fluke, but the beginning of something I could sustain. I coded for 6 hours straight, barely moving, barely thinking about anything except the logic flowing through my fingers onto the screen. This code was different from the Vantage algorithm, cleaner, more elegant, built on principles I'd learned from 18 months of trial and error. It was like writing a second novel after learning from all the mistakes of the first. When I finally stopped, the sun was setting and my apartment was dark except for the glow of my screen. I turned my phone back on. 63 messages. Most were from Vantage, her, legal, even the CEO asking for a call. A few were from former co-workers, some supportive, some confused, one from Jessica that just said, "You're my hero," and one from my mother, "Your father and I are very proud of you. Come to dinner Sunday. Bring your sister. We want to hear everything." I sat there in the darkness, reading that message over and over, feeling something tight in my chest finally begin to loosen. My whole life, I'd been trying to prove I was qualified. Qualified for the degree, qualified for the job, qualified to build something that mattered. I'd been waiting for someone to give me permission, to tell me I was ready, to acknowledge that I belonged in rooms where important decisions were made. But standing in that conference room on Friday, saying I built it in front of everyone, that hadn't been about proving I was qualified. It had been about finally understanding that I didn't need anyone's permission, that the work itself was the proof that I'd been qualified all along. I opened a new document and started writing. Not code this time, a job posting. Seeking senior engineer for early stage startup building adaptive systems platform. Must be comfortable with ambiguity, passionate about solving impossible problems, and ready to build something that doesn't exist yet. Experience with being underestimated, a plus. I posted it on 3 different job boards, then sent the link to Jessica with a note. Interested? Her response came back in under a minute. When do I start?